What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Jonas, and with me, as always, is my man, Mr. David Fuchs. And we got a young, handsome, vibrant face on the podcast today, Mr. Jon Gruber, our special guest, joining us. John, what's up? David, what's up? How you guys
I,
doing?
I actually think it would have been funnier if you said that first and people would have thought you were about to talk about me and
Yeah.
then you pivoted to John. I think that would have been
You
better, Joe.
do have a young, vibrant face, but I see this young, vibrant face all the time. So, it's just new.
No, it's great to have a new face on. I have a great feeling about this episode. I really do.
I do as well. And Joe, always good to reconnect with you and finally get to participate in the podcast.
For real, for real. So, um, we always love having guests on. We actually haven't had a guest on in a while, other than some of our recent exam passers. So, this is a really good chance for us on the cast to sit here and not just talk to you guys about the CFP, but now let's put it actually into action inside of the industry. So, John, why don't you tell a little bit, everybody, a little bit about yourself, what you do, and your experience with the CFP a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I, like most people, didn't necessarily have the financial advisory career path on my mind when I graduated college. I was a UC Santa Barbara undergrad, studied communications, got out a quarter early, which helped me give me some time to figure out really what I wanted to do with my life. Started interviewing around. It was mostly tech sales roles, just given the kind of friend group I was in and the type of environment I was brought up in at Santa Barbara. Didn't feel all that impassioned about the work I would be doing. So I
Mm.
knew that wasn't a career path that I could really pursue. I thank my buddy Trevor and his dad, Randy. His dad worked at a financial advisory firm up in Northern California. When we were talking a bit about what my plans were, or maybe lack of plans for post grad work, he popped in and he mentioned that he might be able to introduce me to a financial advisory firm down in Southern California. Hadn't really even had that on my radar at all. Seemed interesting. Went through the interview process, and it seemed like a really cool industry for me to build my career in.
So, what kind of attracted you to it? Was it working with people? Was it that you weren't going to be behind a desk or pushing sales? What was kind of the main attractor for you?
Both of those, absolutely. Working with people and not really having to work behind a desk every single day. I don't think my personality would jive very well with just being behind a computer all day. For me, though, it was really two main things. And one of them was a selfless reason, and the other one was, of course, a selfish reason. Selflessly, I know that I'm a lot more into the work that I do when I have some sort of passion behind it. And the way I understood it and have continued to understand it is the work of a financial advisor truly empowers their clients to get more out of their life. Now, we all know money is not everything, money can't buy happiness. But if your finances aren't in order, you're going to be really limited on what you can do in life. So I want to be able to provide that impact to my closer uh, community and the larger community around me. Selfishly, I wanted to make a lot of really good money. I like to do fun stuff. I wanted to build a really nice lifestyle for myself and my future family.
There you go. I don't mind that. David, have you ever been to UCSB?
No.
I would not have left
Why?
quarter early. I mean that campus is on the beach. Like everybody's throwing frisbees around, biking around campus. People got surfboards. I would have never left a semester. I would
That
have never
that
left
sounds
Santa
like a
Barbara.
that actually sounds like a really tough place to graduate from, I have to
And,
admit. And yeah, I feel like I hear that about all the West Coast schools. Arizona State, Arizona, all the California schools that are on the water. It's
yeah.
just like it's too nice and the dropout rate is like crazy.
Yeah,
But
I
all
got
right.
to give you props for leaving a quarter early. That's impressive.
Didn't leave a quarter early. I was done with school and classes a quarter early. So I had 3 months of being at school, but not in classes. So that
Oh,
was
So
very
so
that's
that
even
fortunate.
yeah,
harder.
there you go.
That's
That's
where the money
flipping.
is made.
All right, I wanna. So you start off in doing, different jobs. I was the same way, by the way. I started off as in broadcasting and sports broadcasting, and then somehow I moved my way over into into an RIA that I'm at right now. So you made the change, and just so we can get a little better background on your path and what you're doing. What was the first job you had, and what were you doing? And what did you move right to Capstone, or Did
Mhm.
you go somewhere else? So your first job at Capstone was what? What were you doing?
So in college, I did a bunch of valet jobs and I did a little bit of marketing for my dad's company. Didn't really see a long-term fit in that. I started with a different firm for about 18 months before I joined Capstone, actually much more of an insurance focus than a planning focus. And I didn't really know much about the industry at that point. So I probably didn't do enough due diligence to fully understand what I had signed up for. But at the time, it was the only job offer I had gotten, and I was getting pretty pressed on time to get an
Yeah,
offer or to get a job. So
right.
moving forward there, I thank them endlessly for giving me the opportunity to get into this industry that I probably would never have considered previously. But I was looking for a bit of a different setup. Philosophically, I was looking for something a little bit different. So I made that transition and used that information to solidify my decision to move forward with Capstone. And now, almost 6.5 years later, I know for a fact it was the best decision I made for my career.
So the first place you were at, it sounds like it was a little bit more, they say financial advisors, but they were more so doing a lot of insurance business, and you wanted to move more into wealth management, like I like to call it.
Yeah, true. And I knew what the products were. I knew what I was going to be selling at like kind of face value, but I didn't truly know all the ins and outs about what was planning versus insurance versus
Hmm.
managed investments versus brokerage accounts. I barely knew what a stock versus a bond was when I started studying for the seven.
Yeah.
So did a lot of learning and trying to figure out a lot about what I was looking for in a firm and what I was not looking for in a firm. Helped me condense down my list of maybe 12 firms I took interviews with down to two and ultimately decided the one to move forward with Capstone.
So it wasn't a situation where you had like a book built over there and you were moving firms and you were bringing them over. You were kind of making a clean break and starting over at Capstone.
Somewhat in the middle. There was no business that I brought over, but the relationships I was able to continue working with them on more additional things on top of what we had done with them previously.
So what attracted you to Capstone? I mean, 12 firms is a lot.
Yeah, it was. I really just went back in my LinkedIn inbox and responded to all the recruiters at firms that seemed semi interesting. Took those 12 interviews, and of that 12, of course, Capstone was in there. For me, it was a handful of things. Number one was most importantly, I wanted to build a truly, truly, truly comprehensive practice. Certainly, still see the value of insurance and annuities in a financial plan. They're not for everybody, but they can be really impactful for the right people. Over that similar time period, I realized that I wanted to become a CFP, a certified financial planner, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. And I wanted to build more of a planning focused, investment focused practice where I could give advice, guidance, still have the same platform to be able to sell products, but more so focus on the advice than anything.
So what kind of relationships were you developing at that point where, I mean, that's a pretty big decision for somebody that young. And I was in the same seat too, where I was sitting there going, I got hired by Smith Barney. We're primarily an investment shop. And they were at the point where they were starting to transition to financial planning when I got hired back in 2006. So there was certainly more of an emphasis. What were the things, or were there meetings, or was there like a particular client or thing in mind that kind of led you like, this is what I want to do? And I could tell you, I know what it was for me. There was these two sets of clients that we sat with and we were working through the retirement plan. I remember how many questions they were asking and how at ease they look. And I was like, I want to do that. Did you have that moment with a group of clients that made you kind of go, I want to do more of this financial planning thing than just selling an investment or insurance?
I wouldn't even say it was a specific client because at that point, my conversations weren't anything even close to what like a CFP typically talks about.
Right.
For me, it was honestly listening to a bunch of podcasts, kind of like yours, hadn't heard yours at that point yet back in 2019, but just learning about these different perspectives and different philosophies on the business helped me open my mind to what other options are out there for working with clients, not necessarily better or worse, just different from what I was doing, which ended up being in perfect philosophical alignment with what I wanted to do.
Mm.
And so I use that knowledge base to ask some very pointed questions like, hey, like, tell me about your financial planning process. How many plans does a typical advisor write per year? And at that point, my current firm was making a pretty seismic shift towards planning. It just seemed like a perfect alignment philosophically, on top of just having a really great connection with the leadership team, really craving that additional training on a very, very open architecture platform.
So at what point did you decide that you were going to take the exam, and when did you actually take it?
So that was my COVID project for me. I had signed up on the recommendation of my senior advisor here at Capstone to go through the UCLA. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was gonna say, so you started at Capstone what year? 2017, you said?
2019, I started with Capstone.
2019.
So I had a
So it was a couple years after you started, it sounds like, or was it like right as COVID started?
so I had about a year under my belt with Capstone
Okay.
before COVID hit, almost a year to the day. And so I had already signed up for the UCLA program. I was going to be starting, I think, around early April 2020. Was supposed to be on campus at UCLA twice a week. Obviously, that went to shambles pretty quickly with COVID. So it turned into a fully online program where there was, some courses that were taught virtually with an actual instructor. A lot of courses were just here, do these homeworks and do these assignments. So the silver lining of COVID is that I'm a very borderline neurotic when it comes to just being productive. So COVID gave me the excuse to just like buckle down and focus on my work and focus on my studying. Did that course over 2 years. I was still working a lot of hours in my professional job while I was studying. So balancing those two was somewhat of a challenge, but it was just
You're
sacrifice.
getting ahead. That was going to be the question that I was going to come to next.
Yeah. So
But
through that time, I did a big crash course program at the beginning of 2022. Took the exam, I think, in March or April of 2022.
oh, okay. So then we actually ended up then we took it actually the same time because I took it in
Ethics course, right?
March.
And not the
Wait,
ethics.
the first, yeah, you were it was
College.
the first one that they added behavioral finance and we had to wait 6 weeks to get it. Yeah,
That was a
yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah, you know, it was a lot of people say like, it sucked because the wait was so long, but I was like, you know what? I didn't want to walk out that day and be so demoralized. So I was like, you know what? I'm kind of okay waiting 6 weeks to hear. I'm like, and even if I fail, I'm like, you know what? At that point, I probably forgot about it already.
I felt the exact opposite. I overstudied way too much. I'm just kind of a little bit weird like that. So I walked out of that test feeling 99% confident that I did pass, and just having to wait the 6 weeks to get the official green stamp was a bit of a
Yeah,
challenge.
yeah, I was definitely not I was definitely not even close to that as confident. So all right, let me go back and I apologize for interrupting you there, but
But
um in terms of balancing everything, that's kind of where I wanted to get to. So when you took the CFP and you were, I'm assuming at this point, working from home, if not every day, most days, um, how was the balance with your full-time job? I'm guessing you're still relatively early at your firm, so you're still, you're still hustling. I know you still probably are now, but those first few years you really hustle. How was that balance and what was that like?
it's one of the biggest roadblocks I see with new advisors is trying to balance the studying with the work at the same time. It's like kind of a chicken or the egg thing. You need the licenses and the knowledge to be able to do the job well. And sometimes though the job itself can do well to help you learn the study material. For me, I see this as a career. This isn't just a job where I'm, turning it on at 9 and shutting it off at 5. This is a really lifestyle and a career for me. So for me, I knew that having these licenses would be such a benefit to me that I wasn't ever sacrificing my work time. I was still working the same amount of hours that I was previously, but it was 30 to 45 minutes in the morning before I would start my day. I can't study at the end of the day, so that was never an issue or never a thing I did during the week. But weekends, I would wake up early, bang out studying Saturday, Sunday, and then do the rest of my fun stuff on the weekend. So more sacrificing the personal time for studying than letting it impact the course of my business.
That's the toughest part. And I'm a very much and David and I have discussed it. I'm very much a night studier. I can't do it in the morning. When I get up, I want to get my day going, and like knowing that all the stuff that I needed to do is now to rest. Now I could like relax and study from 6 to 9 or 6 to 10 or whatever that time was. It's a lot of Celsius involved, a lot of Celsius, a lot of Red Bulls.
I didn't
Uh,
even know if Celsius was a big thing back then when I was studying.
I heard of it right before COVID, and I used it for my two levels of CFA because I didn't even know about it when I took level one, but it was definitely on hot rotation during CFA.
Okay.
Were you studying every day, or did you take days off, like, and did you load up on the weekends and kind of be able to kind of have a smaller workload during the week?
It was totally dependent on how much work I had to do. Like there were some nights where I had to get on Zoom with my partners at 8 or 9 o'clock and prep for a few hours. So it wasn't so much a daily commitment that I made to myself. It was more of like a weekly, hey, I know I need to get this done between Monday and Sunday. And if that's 5 days during the week and I can cut out during the weekend, or if I just too slam during the week, do it on the weekend. It was a little bit more situational, but just had to do what I had to do to balance it.
Yeah.
What do you think are your biggest takeaways from the exam? Like, what did you walk away from the exam going, I'm actually really happy I studied this because now I know this, or now it's created this process in my business? What were some of those big takeaways?
So for me, it was more of a general takeaway where, I learned a lot through just partnering with senior advisors and doing my CE and learning a bunch of stuff from other people. But without or until having gone through the actual CFP curriculum, I realized that there was just so many things, estate planning related, tax strategies, defined benefit plans, property and casualty insurance that I really had no idea how to talk about. And I think most CFPs would agree you're not going to be able to be an expert in all 5 areas. That's why you have CPAs who are a specific tax person, estate planning attorneys for this, insurance people for this, et cetera, et cetera. But having the 5 to 10% depth, maybe lower in certain areas and higher in others, knowledge about everything related to personal wealth, equip me with the ability to at least ask questions about these different areas to see, is it relevant to their situation? And if so, who are the right types of professionals to bring in order to give that specific advice, right? Like estate planning, I can talk about gifting and estate taxes, that type of thing, but I'm going to bring in an estate planning attorney to really give the advice and, of course, draft the legal documents.
For sure, for sure. Do you think that you'd be as good of an advisor without your CFP? Do you think you would have
No.
picked it up just from the people? I mean, I learned a lot from the people around me, like a lot. But I feel like the CFP was a supercharge for me. Do you feel like no matter how much you work with people, there's certain knowledge that the CFP gave you?
In much more of a structured way,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because I work with a ton of amazing people here. I network with a lot of CFPs externally or just general advisors externally. So I'm confident that I would have learned the information eventually, but it probably would have taken me 10 or 15 years to accumulate the amount of knowledge that I gained in the 2 years that I was studying for the CFP. And so, from a general confidence standpoint, again, being a young advisor, it's a combination of really two things. Do I really know as much as I hope to know? And two, do other people see me as an authority figure where I might not feel that way?
Mm,
So, knowledge base number one, right? As a brand new advisor, there's a lot of different things that you have to learn. And sometimes it can be structured, sometimes it can be not structured. And so, just giving me that knowledge base to feel confident approaching the multi-million-dollar business owner or the large estate planning case or just a generally intimidating type of person, what I realized was even going through the FINRA licenses, I knew more than a significant majority, 95, maybe even more percent of the population. And going through the CFP program, I'm confident I'm in the literal top 1% of knowledge in the world related to money. So that
I
gave me a
don't,
lot of and confidence.
yeah, I also think just because you come out and a lot of times you come out of exams, we all do this in college and high school. You learn it, you get whatever grade on the exam, and then you pretty much just forget about it, 2 days after.
Mhm.
Um, I felt that this exam was the most applicable of any exam that I've ever taken for this industry. So the FINRA exams, honestly, maybe 10% of that applies,
If that.
if that. The insurance stuff, if you're doing insurance, I'm sure it applies, if you're heavy insurance, I'm sure it applies, but For most people, I don't think a lot of those laws really apply to their daily, responsibility. I think this one applies in so many different ways. I can personally say that there's an example almost every day where I'm like, that's something that was on the CFP. Maybe I knew it cold still, or maybe I forgot a little bit of it, but I was at least familiar with the concept and
Mm.
knew where to go to get that answer and could somewhat knowledgeably speak on it.
I,
Yeah,
I, I'm sorry, John, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I actually wanted to ask you another question on this. And David, I want your opinion on this too. You said something really interesting, which is the authority figure. And I think that's one of the most intimidating things as a young advisor. And I remember being 24, walking into somebody with $1 million, and they're looking at me like, yo, I got socks that are older than you. Like,
Hmm.
what are you going to tell me about money that I don't already know? I'm 20 years, 30 years, 40 years your senior. You're a kid. And I think, for me, I actually never closed $1 million client till after CFP because the questioning, the line of questioning, and I remember there was one time I had this couple client, and I met with them like 3 times trying to close this business, and they were asking something. I drew out how an A, B, and C trust worked on a piece of paper because I had literally diagrammed it for my CFP. And they looked at me and they go, "You are the smartest person we have ever met." And I was like, "Thank you." I was like,
Hmm.
"You guys gonna sign the paperwork?" And they're like, "Yes, we choose." And I was like, that exam just paid for itself because that client was like 1.3 million of assets. And we did insurance and we did their retirement planning and we set up 2 education accounts and we did a full gamut of planning. But until they saw me as that authority figure, I think it did more for my confidence than necessarily for them, that I felt like I was in control of the meeting, not I was walking in to try to sell them something. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about that.
so in my experience, people think they have a financial advisor, and I'm sure you guys have probably gotten this before. Oh, I have a financial advisor. It ends up being the 401k representative 800 number that they can call for their defined contribution plan, or their banker, or their tax guy, or their insurance guy. Whatever it is, there's a lot of advisors out there. But from my perspective, I think the CFP really solidifies very distinctly what it is that that individual does.
Hmm.
And for me, coming out of school, I was 22. I looked like I was 17. So I was really playing that uphill battle of you are young and you look even younger. I wanted to get some credibility on paper. And I know in some situations that doesn't really matter at all. But for me, it was really important to be able to have that additional confidence to talk to these higher net worth people, where you can talk about what it means to be a CFP, what you've learned, the process that it took 2 years of studying to go get this license, and especially talking about the word fiduciary. When we do financial planning or true fee-based planning for our clients, we are a fiduciary in that capacity. But I'll use some of the CFP, not necessarily marketing materials, but the code of ethics and the definition of a fiduciary when I'm talking to individuals for the first time, saying, look, I'm a fiduciary by definition of my firm, and the CFP marks brings me up to here as a fiduciary. Maybe not everybody's heard the term CFP, but most people that are considering working with an advisor have likely heard that word fiduciary.
I also think, Joe, that yes, of course, there's an authority, there's a confidence that it gives you, but when it comes to the situation that you were mentioning, pretty, a larger client, um, you're 20, 25 years younger than them, you give them one example, and now they think you're a genius. I don't think the age, to be honest with you, I think there's maybe it is a somewhat factor, but I think as long as you are giving good advice and you're delivering it confidently, I think a lot of times they overlook the age. They don't even think about that. If they're hearing you speak eloquently, confidently, and knowledgeably, because I mean, I've seen it for myself where I've gotten into a conversation and I'm like, I'm having uh oh man, I can't think of the word. Not intruder syndrome. What am I thinking of?
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter.
Imposter syndrome. Where I go into the call thinking like, I'm having a little bit of imposter syndrome. And then once you get going and you're realizing how knowledgeable you are and you're speaking confidently and you're exuberating that confidence, a lot of times I don't even think they're thinking about the age at that point. They're
I,
just feeling good about talking to someone that they trust.
I agree. I think it's more of a battle for us.
Yeah. Mentally going into
Yeah,
a call or a meeting for
a
sure.
100%. So, John, now you've kind of shot up in your career and now you're kind of on the management side of this. And I know that you're involved in a lot of the recruiting efforts of your firm in bringing advisors and helping them get set up with their clients. What are you now on the management side? What do you tend to see that CFPs maybe do that maybe other advisors don't? How do you now integrate the CFP into the management side of the business? Like how are you now using it where, I know production is still a part of of what you do, but I know that the management it's from what it sounds like is becoming more and more a part of your day to day.
Mhm. My long-term vision in this career, and this isn't something I knew immediately, but I figured it out as I was transitioning over here to Capstone. My eventual goal is to start my own firm. Now, how that's going to be structured, partners, branding, name of the firm, even, I have no idea what that looks like yet. But I do know that I'm surrounded by a bunch of really amazing people here who have done it, who have built businesses, who have built this firm. I'm being mentored by these people who share the vision for me that I have for myself. So it's been a really good relationship that I've had with the firm. Now, as we are recruiting and growing, I'm sure any business owner will say this, the quality of the employees or the quality of the partners that you have are really going to be the make or break for how successful a business can be. And for me, I see a CFP and all other things are the same. I will choose to work with a CFP, partner with a CFP, hire a CFP 10 times out of 10 compared to any other type of designation, because I think it is the most impactful designation and skill set and education that somebody can have in this business. You just see the business a little bit differently, less transactional, less sales focus, less product focus, more advice, strategy, guidance, relationship, communication. I could talk for hours about this type of stuff because I've really built a lot of passion behind it. But for a lot of firms that are hiring, they see the CFP and it's a very big attractor for them. CFA, love it. It's great. I personally wouldn't do it. It just seems like too big of a lift for that. But I think if you're going to be working directly with clients and giving advice, the CFP is second to none.
And that's translating into practice when you guys are recruiting. Like you actually see better quality businesses, more long-term clients with CFP, people with the designation, I should say.
Absolutely. Of the numerous people that I've hired over the past handful of years, the CFPs are still here. The CFPs are typically pretty darn good at their job and typically very attractive to their clients, and it makes for a really good partner.
That's incredible. I mean, that's incredible to hear. Like, it's a lot of times we're getting it to put some credibility and some letters behind our name, but to actually see that translate into practice is exactly, somebody who got the letters a very long time ago. That's the people that I want to share this designation with, are people who are actually doing that. So, John, as we wrap this up a little bit, just tell everybody a little bit about what you have going on at your firm and a little bit about your growth going forward and how you're integrating more and more CFPs into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And might need to be a little bit limited compliance wise on what I say here. But my philosophy on working with clients is that you should have every tool in your toolbox, every platform, every product, everything possible in order to be the best advocate for your clients. More than half of prospects, I think there was an e-money study a couple of years ago, I think it was maybe 57%, if not more, want to work with a single professional on all things related to their personal wealth. And so if you're at a fee only RIA, I love that model, but you're of course limited on what you can do outside of just charging a fee for a client. You're at an insurance company, odds are you're probably not doing a ton of wealth management or planning and any sort of iteration of that. But for me, having my 766, got my 24 recently, CFP, all that, there's really nothing I can't do outside of legal and tax advice, of course, that a client would need from me. And if it's not my personal area of expertise, there's a lot of great partners I have internally at the firm that I could bring in to have that more advanced conversation about a certain topic. And so as we are growing, the truly comprehensive mindset is something that is very important to us. Now, a lot of firms and individuals will claim, hey, we are comprehensive. Typically, that means we do one thing very well or almost entirely. We can kind of do some more ad hoc things over here. So more stuff you can do, the better the resource you're going to be for your client.
Pretty damn good, man. What do we even say to that, David? I don't even know what to say to that. That's pretty. It's exactly what
That's
you want
great.
there. Well, let's wrap this thing up. So, David, do you have any more questions for John?
No, I'm good.
I got one more question for you, John, and we'll wrap on this. For somebody taking the CFP exam, thinking about taking the CFP exam, studying for the exam, what piece of advice or couple pieces of advice would you give them if maybe I'm a little on the fence or maybe I'm kind of in the process, but I'm having trouble with the balance and I don't know if I should do this thing.
If you see a long-term future in this business, go do it. Yes, there is a cost to doing it, both financially, time, mental bandwidth, stress, all the different things. But if you think about this like a career, like a lifetime career, like I do, the short, relatively amount of time that you need to spend to get this license will be a significant value to your clients, most importantly, your business and your bottom line. So if you're at all on the fence, just do it. Operationally, I would say, and David, you kind of touched on this about like actually remembering this stuff. There are expedited courses. I don't know all the details of them because I haven't done them before, but I know there's programs that maybe 4 to 8 months or 4 to 6 months you can study for the test and qualify to go take the actual test. Just like in school, if you're studying for a short period of time, you're probably going to know it for the exam and then forget everything when you walk out the test. This is information and knowledge that you need to retain if it's actually going to be relevant to you. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. So the program I did was over the course of about 20 months, give or take, a handful of quarters. And then what I would also suggest is use a different program as a crash course. So if you use, let's say, Kaplan for the study program, maybe use a Dalton for the crash course. Different perspectives, different wording of questions will only help to solidify that information better for you.
Great advice. Great advice. And when he said Dalton, he meant using some tutoring. That's what he really meant. If you're
That's sorry.
tutoring, you always come. I'm kidding.
Verbal typo.
Shameless plug. All right, John, thank you so much for being a part of our podcast today. David, we got anything else?
No, we're good. Wrap it up.
As always, everybody, with any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to David or myself. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please make sure to hit that like button on YouTube. Thank you, guys, and we will see you next week.
Thank you both.